He had to die first so he could stay alive. In a move so insane it sounds like fiction, he dug his own grave, climbed in, and let them bury him alive, all by choice. But this wasn't some twisted dare. No, it was the only way to expose a web of lies and a dangerous conspiracy. So, every move had to be calculated. Every second underground, a gamble between life and death. And when he finally emerged, the truth he exposed shook everything. But here's the real question. Was it worth it? Or did he just dig his own grave for real? And let's find out. Ramon Sosa had it all. A successful businessman, a devoted father, a respected boxing coach. What else can a man expect from life? His life was full of energy, laughter, and the kind of charm that made people attracted to him. Naturally, never in his wildest dreams did he think someone would secretly want him dead. But you know, life has a twisted sense of humor. One evening, he walked into his gym like he had 100 times before. But this time was different. This time, he overheard something that made his blood run cold. A conversation. A name. And then the sinking realization that he was the target of a cold-blooded murder-for-hire plot. At first, he thought it had to be a mistake, maybe even a sick joke. But when he confronted someone he trusted, the truth hit him like a punch to the gut. And the people involved? They weren't bluffing. What happened next was something straight out of a crime thriller. The cops got involved, and together they came up with a plan: stage his own murder. Make it look convincing and get photos, realistic, brutal, undeniable proof. He lay in a shallow grave, hands tied, dirt smeared on his face, as a camera shutter clicked away, capturing the moment that was supposed to seal his fate. It was eerie, watching himself die to stay alive, and someone had put a price on his head. Someone had given orders. And now, thanks to a staged crime scene and a whole lot of deception, he was about to find out who. To this day, he's the only man who's ever walked away from his own grave. But how is Ramon's life before all this? He had built a name for himself, rubbing elbows with celebrities, running a thriving boxing gym in Houston. He had charm, passion, and a deep love for the sport. Born in Carolina, Puerto Rico, he started boxing young, training with his father and sharing the gym with world champions. At 17, he turned pro, earning the nickname Puerto Rican Express. But after years in the ring, he shifted gears, choosing to coach instead, passing his knowledge on to the next generation. And then he met a woman, Lulu. Their story began in 2007 when a friend convinced him to check out a local club. The moment he walked in, he saw her, dancing, confident, magnetic. She caught his eye, and as fate would have it, she stepped right on his foot. Later, she admitted it wasn't an accident. That little moment set everything in motion. They clicked instantly, dancing like they'd known each other forever. The first song they shared, Brujeria by Gran Combo de Puerto Rico, became their song. And guess what? Within a year, Ramon was down on one knee, proposing at Christmas, and by March 15, 2009, they were husband and wife. Isn't like a cinema, a classic romantic one? Lulu had come from Mexico, bringing her son and daughter to the U.S. in search of a better future. Sho was hardworking, generous, and fiercely dedicated to those she cared about. When Ramon opened his second gym in 2010, Lulu was right there with him, running the business side and working as a personal trainer. Together, they built something incredible. But life always changes unpredictably. Lulu never really got along with Ramon's kids. From the beginning, his daughter Mia felt like she wasn't wanted, like Lulu had no interest in bonding with them. Over time, the distance between Ramon and his children grew, fueled by arguments, financial disputes, and the feeling that his attention was being pulled in another direction. When he and Lulu got married, his kids weren't even there. Mia found out later and said it broke her heart. It was the moment she knew things had changed, and as it turned out, things were about to get much, much worse. Ramon and Lulu had built something special together, a gym that wasn't just a place to work out, but a thriving fitness center pulling in solid profits every month. But while business was booming, their marriage was crumbling. After 6 years together, things took a shady turn. Lulu started venting to her friends, saying Ramon had lost his drive. She claimed he was barely lifting a finger while she was running the show. And it wasn't just about laziness. Lulu painted a much darker picture of him. She told people that when Ramon drank, he could get aggressive. She described moments where he'd grab or shove her, even saying he had forced himself on her, calling it rape. Ramon, on the other hand, denied everything. He insisted that no charges had ever been filed and swore the only fights he ever had were in the ring. As their marriage unraveled, strange things started happening at the gym. Ramon noticed more clients signing up, but somehow the numbers weren't adding up. Money was slipping through the cracks, and he began to suspect that Lulu was pocketing some of it. On the flip side, around that time, Lulu met with an attorney, saying she feared for her life. She even had photos, scratches, bruises, claiming they were proof of Ramon's violence. Her lawyer saw them as undeniable evidence, but Ramon dismissed them as lies. One thing, though, wasn't up for debate: a hole punched straight through a door. That one Ramon admitted to, but he said it wasn't about Lulu, it was just frustration boiling over. Even as their divorce process started, they still lived under the same roof, just on separate floors. But friends whispered that Lulu was scared, really scared, of what might happen next. Then in June 2015, something bizarre happened at the gym. A guy who asked to stay anonymous was working out when he overheard Lulu talking to her 16-year-old daughter. She mentioned someone, a customer, who apparently had connections to a hitman. And then the name Ramon came up. The guy couldn't shake what he heard. The next day, he even confronted Lulu about it. And that's when she opened up, claiming that Ramon had been abusing her and, well, she wanted him gone for good. She even made a gun gesture with her hand just to drive the point home. That's when the guy realized this wasn't just talk, she was serious. Instead of ignoring it, he decided to act. He played along, letting Lulu think he had connections who could arrange the hit. But really, he was working behind the scenes to protect Ramon. Later, Ramon revealed that we can call this guy Mundo. When Ramon got wind of it, he suspected money was the motive. If he died after the divorce was finalized, Lulu wouldn't get his retirement benefits, the gym, or their house. He went to the police, but they brushed it off because simply words alone weren't enough to take action. So Ramon and a friend took matters into their own hands. They started recording conversations, setting up fake messages with a made-up hitman to get Lulu to trust them. What she didn't know was that the second phone was used in this exchange. It was Ramon's. He was pretending to be the hitman himself. As their plan unfolded, Ramon felt the pressure of it all. But his friend, he stayed cool, documenting every move, every word. They weren't just trying to prove a point, they were actually building a case, one that would be impossible to deny. Ramon and Mundo couldn't shake the anxiety gnawing at them. The fear that Lulu might hire another hitman kept them on edge, like a storm cloud that never cleared. Ramon, convinced danger lurked around every corner, kept his worries to himself. But he took no chances. He started carrying a gun everywhere. Even in his own home, he wasn't at ease. At night, he slept with the loaded weapon tucked under his pillow, as if danger might slip through the door at any moment. Meanwhile, Mundo played his role, keeping up the act of negotiating with Lulu, pretending he was still coordinating with the imaginary hitman. Lulu, meanwhile, kept throwing out incentives, money, jewelry, even a car, anything to seal the deal. And yet, despite everything, Ramon and Lulu still lived under the same roof, an unsettling reality that only added to the tension. But this wasn't the first time things had gotten out of hand. A month earlier, on June 9, 2015, the cops had already been called to the Sosa house. It started with a fight over a truck. Ramon and Lulu's son were at each other's throats. Someone recorded the whole thing on a cell phone. Ramon tried to take the truck, but Lulu's son wasn't having it. The kid claimed it was his, and when the dust settled, Ramon was accused of hitting him. He denied it outright, scoffing at the idea. If I had hit him for real, he argued, he wouldn't be standing. But the police weren't convinced, and he was slapped with an assault charge. Anyway, later that month, things escalated even further. On June 30th, Lulu took him to court again, pushing for a restraining order. Her lawyer painted a grim picture, accusing Ramon of abuse and claiming she and her son feared for their lives. The judge sided with her, forcing Ramon out of the house and even barring him from his own gym in the Woodlands. But Ramon wasn't one to stay down for long. He fired back with his own restraining order, ensuring Lulu couldn't step foot in his original gym either. It was a mess, but to Ramon it was just another round in the fight. He saw himself as a boxer taking an 8 count, knocked down but far from finished. Then 10 days into their plan, Ramon, using his alias Paco, told Mundo he had bought a 9mm pistol for $200. And that purchase shifted everything. When Lulu handed over an initial payment for the murder weapon, Mundo knew it was time to get the authorities involved. He went straight to Lieutenant Mike Atkins at the Montgomery County Constable's office. Atkins had seen a lot in his career, but this was a first. Now, with enough evidence to take Lulu down, finally the cops stepped in. But Mundo had to keep playing the game. If Lulu sensed something was off, she might just hire someone else overnight. So he kept her reassured, keeping up the illusion. The grand finale came on July 20th when Lulu met the hitman, an undercover cop. But before we reveal what happened next, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video, because just this simple and quick job carries loads of motivation for us to create such content. The meeting was set in a parking lot near a gym. Lulu showed up with watches, jewelry, and $500 in cash as part of the final payment. That was all law enforcement needed, and as a result, they had her. But instead of rushing to arrest her, they decided to make the case airtight. They needed to erase any doubt about her intentions, the plan, fake Ramon's murder. Ramon agreed, though the whole thing felt like something straight out of a crime movie. The cops used real crime scene photos as a reference, teaching themselves how to make a convincing bullet wound with online tutorials. They took him to a remote spot, laid him in a shallow grave, and positioned his hands as if they were tied. Dirt was thrown over him, just enough to sell the illusion. When they were done, the picture they took was chilling. Irrefutable proof of a murder, carried out exactly as planned. 2 days later, on July 22nd, Lulu met with the hitman again in the same parking lot. This time it was all caught on camera. She handed over the rest of the payment, cash, jewelry, even Ramon's white pickup truck. Then the undercover officer showed her the stage photo. There was her husband, lifeless in a grave. She laughed and felt relieved. No shock, no remorse, just a cold, casual laugh, as if she had just seen something mildly amusing. As they went over the final details of the job, she even joked, playfully asking if Ramon was really dead, making a little gesture like he might pop back up. And you see, that sealed it. The next morning, the police paid her a visit at the gym, body cameras rolling. They approached under the guise of a welfare check, saying Ramon had been reported missing and they needed her statement. Lulu didn't flinch. She played the concerned wife perfectly, telling them she hadn't seen him since July 16th and that her mother and daughter were with her that day. She kept up the act until the moment the cops cuffed her. Immediately, she protested, "What is this? Why are you arresting me?" She demanded to know why they hadn't read her rights. An officer quickly corrected her. They had. At the station, she clammed up, refusing to speak without a lawyer. The charge: solicitation of capital murder. Her divorce lawyer, Julio Hoglar, came out swinging, painting her as a woman pushed to the brink by an abusive husband. He claimed she had been living in fear, that desperation had driven her to make a terrible choice. But whether a jury would buy that story was another matter entirely. Ramon Sosa spent 3 days hiding, pretending to be dead. Can you imagine that? Just sitting there, knowing the world thought you were gone, while the police worked behind the scenes to confirm the unthinkable, that his own wife had tried to have him killed. His family had no clue where he was. People were starting to worry, wondering why he'd suddenly vanished. But all the while, the truth was unraveling. The mastermind behind the whole thing? Maria de Lourdes, Lulu Sosa, his wife. The woman he had once loved and trusted had made arrangements to erase him from existence. But on July 23, 2015, her carefully laid plan collapsed when she was arrested. She thought she had everything figured out, that she was about to be free of him forever. Instead, she was in handcuffs, accused of hiring a hitman to do the job. But for Ramon, the nightmare wasn't over. He still had to do something even harder: tell his kids. Mia Sosa, his daughter, remembers the exact moment her world flipped upside down. She had just gotten home late from her shift at a comedy club, expecting nothing more than a quiet night. Instead, she found her brother waiting in her room, looking tense, like he was holding on to some terrible secret. Then he handed her the phone. On the other end, her father's voice. Alive. Barely above a whisper, he reassured her he was okay. And then came the words that shattered everything. Lulu had tried to have him murdered. Mia could barely process it. The shock hit her like a punch to the gut. She slid down against the wall, pulling her knees to her chest, sobbing. How could this be real? How could the woman who had been a part of their family, who they had trusted, do something so monstrous? And if that wasn't enough, Ramon had to deal with another nightmare: his reputation being dragged through the mud. Lulu had spent months making him out to be the villain, spinning lies about how he was a violent, abusive drunk. People believed her. Some even turned against him, convinced that she was the victim. That betrayal cut just as deep. But the truth was impossible to hide. The prosecution had everything they needed: recorded conversations of Lulu negotiating the murder, proof of her down payment to the supposed hitman, and the most damning piece of all, a staged photo of Ramon, appearing lifeless as evidence that the job had been done. And what did Lulu do when she saw it? And she just smiled. She was relieved. She thought she had won. But the truth was, she lost everything. While waiting for trial, the bogus assault charges she had filed against Ramon were thrown out. She also had to agree to a divorce settlement that left her with nothing. Ramon kept their home, their gym, everything. Sitting in a jail cell with no money, no freedom, and no future, there wasn't much left for her to fight for. After 15 months behind bars, Lulu finally cracked. In October 2016, she took a plea deal, admitting to second-degree solicitation of murder. She dodged a life sentence but still got 20 years in prison. Ramon accepted it, though he wasn't sure 20 years was enough. And Mia? She was furious. To her, someone who had planned a murder shouldn't get a second chance at life. And yet others still tried to paint Lulu as the victim. Her divorce attorney claimed her side of the story had never truly been told, that she was drowning in regret. But by then, no one was buying it. Lulu had dreamed of a fresh start, a better life, and instead she'd destroyed everything. What was once a promising future ended in a cold, gray prison cell. She would spend the next 2 decades paying for a crime that, if it had gone the way she planned, would have left Ramon buried in a shallow grave. For Ramon, the scars ran deep. The whole thing changed him forever. He doesn't take life for granted anymore. He calls his kids all the time now, knowing that any conversation could be the last. Surviving something like that makes you see things differently. Mia has since moved back to Texas, and after years of distance, she and her father have finally found their way back to each other. Lulu may have tried to break them apart, but in the end, she failed. Today, Ramon travels the world sharing his story. People listen, captivated, because his survival is more than just luck. It's proof that even in the darkest moments, you can find a way to fight back. Much like a cinema, like a mind-bending crime thriller, ain't it? And as for Lulu, the man she once trusted to carry out her plan moved on, even writing a book about the whole thing. But Ramon? He carries a reminder with him every day, a watch. The very same one that was supposed to be taken from his dead body as proof of the hit. It was meant to mark the end of his life, and now it's a symbol that he's still alive, still standing. So what do you think? Could Ramon Sosa be really an abuser? Or was he a victim who got framed as an abuser by his ex-wife? Share your views in the comments section. And if you think this one of the most chilling survival stories, wait for the next one where 3 women survived the unthinkably brutal attack of one of the most notorious serial killers ever. They got raped, got their skull fracture, lost hearing, and still they fought to be alive. Subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. See you soon.